interrupt this program to bring you a special bulletin.
2, 1. All right, we are back with episode 7 of Rings of Power. This episode cements itself as one of the greatest television shows of all time, surely surpassing the entirety of Game of Thrones. Of course, I'm kidding. This episode does feature some of the most stunning visuals and epic moments in the series so far. But let's dive into how some of the writing sets things up and how we feel about the payoff. Sometimes I'm left with dialogue that makes us question if we're watching the same Middle-earth from the movies or something scrapped from the CW. So, this episode, we open on a beautiful sunrise in Eregion as Celebrimbor steps outside to sip his tea. This is one of the moments that I'm like, oh, that's pretty clear green screen right there. But, I mean, we knew it was green screen, but this one stood out to me. But we see him working on the rings for men. We see that he has completed the beginnings of all 9. Each is a ring with no embellishments yet. He picks up Feanor's hammer and notices a missing jewel. And I mentioned, did I mention it in our episode last week, Caleb, that if this episode started out with the 9 rings done, I had an idea of where we were going with it?
I don't remember you saying that.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I thought it and never said it. That happens a lot. But I think my thought was that if the 9 human rings were done at the beginning of this episode, which they're 50-50, I thought this season would end with Adar being killed. Adar will be no more after this season, and Sauron will be the big bad. So that was my prediction. I can't remember if I...
that does ring a bell, actually, now that you say it.
Can't remember if I'd recorded it or not. He notices that Feanor's hammer is missing a jewel. He gets down on the floor to find it and sees a mouse. He gets back up and sees a startling reflection in the mirror. Annatar then walks in and asks if he's doing okay, and Brimbor says he's looking for the jewel, and Annatar is like, you know how forgetful you can be. And then Celebrimbor states that over the last weeks, he has felt clarity and focus like he hasn't felt in years. The world, this was a line that I liked, when the world is still, then the ideas can flow freely. He tells Annatar the rings are nearly complete, and Annatar says he has so enjoyed their time together. And I kind of believed him. That he has enjoyed this time, whether it is to feed his ego, like, yeah, I am messing with these people and they are buying it and I'm getting what I want. Whether it is that or he's truly enjoyed learning from Celebrimbor. I'm not sure. Or he could just be messing with him. I don't know. But I did like that moment quite a bit. But I do sense some foreshadowing that I'm not ready for. Annatar steps outside, and we see the city in flames. Merdania, the third most important elf in Eregion, shows up, speaking for the soldiers and asking what the orders are. Annatar says that he's taking command. Celebrimbor has basically abandoned them to death. And he tells them that they are alone. When they step aside, he tells Merdania that they are alone. Celebrimbor's mind is gone. So he tells her that she has proven her quality, and he will make sure she is rewarded. Nice little moment that I almost thought we were going to launch into another relationship of Sauron and this girl.
You trying to ship Annatar and Merdania?
Yeah, I thought they were trying to ship them. Right now, I like Merdania more than Galadriel. But anyways, even though she just points out things that are happening, but she's more likable. He notices the siege engines have gone quiet, and we cut to see them being repositioned. The orcs then decide to fire them at the mountain, dropping the mountain onto the river, jamming up the river so that they can cross to the wall for battle. Annatar...
I would have been okay with that if it had taken way longer. Like if they had been like, oh, they're trying to dam up the river, and then like went and did some other stuff and then came back to that, and they had been like launching boulders at the side of the mountain for like 3 or 4 hours. It's like, oh, they finally got they finally broke it enough, but it took like 2 attempts. Like they gave it 2 volleys and the entire side of the mountain fell into the river.
I was gonna say
they got a lucky shot in.
Yeah, I'm no expert on rock. No expert on rocks, but I'm pretty sure that's not how mountains work in any way at all. So cool.
Since you guys brought it up, I thought the scene looked really good and the music was great during this moment. But I was like, if you were trying to collapse a mountain, wouldn't you fire at least to the middle of it and not at the top? Because it definitely looked to me like they were just firing at the top of it. And I'm like, okay, you're going to break off some rocks. But yeah.
But no, it's gonna all half a mountain's gonna crumble down here like a distance away from the actual city, and it's also going to completely dry up a lake, and all in 5 minutes.
Okay, so I will say there is a point, I think, up to the nighttime battle in this episode, I think we are spanning days, if not weeks of time.
Wow, they did a terrible job of showing that.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree. But after my second watch, between Keller Brimbor saying in the opening scene that these past few weeks, implying weeks have passed since the end of the previous episode, which had the first siege shots being fired. So I'm under the impression that they've just been slowly picking away at Eregion for a long time. And then we see the damming of the river, but we jump to the dry river. That we know there's no way that possibly happened that quick. But there's other things that happen in that time that makes me think that it's probably a couple days.
Yeah.
So it is poorly shown. It's one of those things that it's not one of the strengths of the show, showing how much time has passed. But I think there's enough there for me to pick up. But I do think most of this battle in the second half of the episode takes place in one night. So they knock down the mountain. We see... And then I notice in this scene too, and it happens every time we're in Eregion, we only seem to have about 12 warriors at any given time and no real person in charge.
Yep.
Murdanya seems to be more in charge than some of the people carrying weapons, and she's in like a robe.
She's a smith.
She's a smith out there watching like over tea at breakfast, and she's just like, oh, they have a siege engine now. And she's more in charge than the others.
I just love how Sauron's getting away with half the crap he's getting. Just like he just told me I'm in charge, and they're just like believing this man. Like Durin's about the only guy who's actually questioned half of anything that he said. Like this entire plot line, everyone else just buys this man.
I love Durin. This episode makes me love Durin even more. I will say this episode leans into his illusion, and I think part of that is they're trusting the audience to understand that he's manipulating people, not just with his words, but magically. So they're willing to go along with him a little bit easier. And then you get the stubborn dwarf who's like, nah, man, this doesn't sit right with me. But I agree. It is one of the weaker spots of the show, how quickly some of these things seem to go. I think it's also them writing themselves into a corner by creating a whole bunch of storylines that don't matter whatsoever and not giving proper time to these at the beginning. So Murdanya, as I said, she's there to point out what's happening for us in case we looked away for a second. So we see all this and Murdanya goes, they're damming the river. And then I commented the music and cinematography were satisfying. And we see Anatar say, prepare for the ground assault. This is where, after my second watch, we never saw those soldiers get into the ground assault. So I'm assuming that's coming in the next episode. He tells them at the beginning, they're in greenish armor, and then the other elves are in goldish silver armor. So I was waiting, and I was like, nope, I never saw greenish armor in the ground assault outside the wall. So from a distance, we see Arondir watching all this happening. So he's there. he just abandoned Isildur to this random group of Sauron following men in the woods, apparently. And just 2 episodes ago, like, peace out, Isildur, have a good time.
Maybe we get an explanation in episode 8, but to this point, it's literally just like, and then Arondir left. Like, he's just out here now.
Yep.
I said earlier that I thought we were all going to arrive at Eregion, and I'm going, why aren't we? Why isn't Isildur just with him there?
Well, he can't make a heroic appearance and save the day if he shows up too early.
Yeah, true. Okay. Yeah, but he's going to bring... I was trying to think of who he could, like, save the day with in the next episode, but he's with a bunch of men who follow Sauron, who have the brand on their back. They're not going to...
I mean, unless they go back to the town where all of the refugees were staying, like, and get some of them to come with them, but that would have to be the explanation.
Yeah.
You guys are thinking way too hard about this show. Just shut up and eat your content, okay?
You're thinking way too little about this show.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on.
So we see Arondir watching. We have a whole bunch of questions about what happened since the last time we saw him. Back in the forge, Celebrimbor sees the mouse again, doing kind of the exact same thing he saw before. And at this point, you're going, oh, it's a glitch in the Matrix. He marks a candle, which I thought was super clever. I was like, credit here.
Yep.
That's good. Marks a candle with charcoal to tell the passing of time. We then cut to the dwarves and see King Durin encouraging Durin Narvi to take the mine from Durin the Fourth. And all the king can think about is that with the elves under siege, they're going to need armor, and he can make a whole bunch of money. We then see Durin the Fourth and Disa guarding the mine like they have just been standing there since the last episode. Like they never left. They've just been rooted there for, if dwarf time is passing at the same amount of time as elves, they've been down there for weeks. Their kids, screw them. You're off doing whatever, man. Narvi shows up with his troop and announces was just weird staging. The whole situation here is the weakest point of Khazad-dûm, from her calling down the bats in the last episode to now they're still standing here. And Narvi shows up with the guys ready to move them out of the way and mine. And then he's just like, hold up, change my mind, stand with you. Like, was he just trying to fake Durin out? It's just one of those...
A lot of fake outs in this episode.
Well, I like what happens. I just think the way they wrote it was clunky. So, but Narvi shows up with his troop and announces that they stand with Durin the Fourth. And Narvi says a great line: "The ring has taken the king's heart. I will not let it take the mountain too." And I really like that one. We know that the mountain is important to the dwarves. It's not just a place to live. It's more than that. So I loved that. Then Narvi's like, oh, by the way, there's an elf here to talk to you. We finally get the reunion of my favorite character dynamic from season 1, Elrond and Durin. And instantly, I was just like, they're so good. I love the two of them together, and their dynamic is great. And Elrond looks tired and defeated already. And he turns to Durin and says, "My heart sings to see you, old friend." And I liked that. He also
especially liked it because he tried to say that the first time in season 1 when he first shows up, and he invokes the right of whatever the hell. And so they lead him in, and then Durin comes in, and he starts saying, "My heart sing," and Durin interrupts him, and he's like, "So this is what we're doing now," and like completely blows him off because he's mad at him at that point. So I like the line, but I also like that it was the line that he was going to say initially, and he actually gets it out this time.
There's deeper meaning to it. This is one of the points that I think one of the times this episode shines. They do kind of a brief exchange of recap of, hey, since I last saw you, And Durin's like, by the way, I am about to overthrow my father. And Elrond is like, whoa, and visibly is shook by this, kind of turns away, and it takes him a second. And Durin goes, what did you bring? And Elrond goes, defeat. And it's just a heavy moment between two friends that I really kind of enjoy. And Elrond says, Eregion's under siege. Like, thousands will die without you. I need your help. And it's a nice moment of heavy meaning. They do a brief recap of, oh, that's the same paragraph. We cut to probably the greatest orc drummer to ever live. The cloud cover is allowing the orcs to advance across the riverbed. Up on the wall, we see this is an unorganized elvish archery. Like, they're already firing at the orcs, and then we hear the supposed commander say, loose arrows, and it's, there already were. Just
they've been doing that. They've been doing that already.
Way to go. And this is where Mordania announces they have a Ravager. So again, she's up there, no armor, no weapons, just hanging out with her friends, the archers. And she announces they have the Ravager, which is basically one of their siege engines to break down the wall. There are like 12 elves on the wall, and there are a lot of orcs. I'll give them credit there. There looks like a substantial amount of orcs.
Can I make a quick comment that's what's it called? What's it called? The machine?
The Ravager.
The Ravager, that's right. Is that now why that feels like one of the most, like, I don't want to say useless, but like just one of the most weird like siege machines I've ever seen in a show, like where you have to actively hammer nails into this wall and you're just kind of like taking it out piece by piece. There's like no coverage like to actually cover the people working on it. Like it just felt very unproductive as I was watching it. It's like, I feel like this is going to be used to further plot later down the line and cause tension, but you know, that's just my opinion.
Yeah. It was one of those that I looked at it and I said, I've never seen anything like that before. Is that even something that was ever used in our world? So I've said I watched the Nerd of the Rings recaps, and he mentioned that he did a quick search and could find no record of any device like this ever. And so he was like, hey, if I have medieval nerds out there, let me know, because I want to know what this is. I thought it was kind of cool looking, but yeah, it doesn't seem super practical to hammer stuff in. It does come in handy later with Damrod.
Yes. Well, the point I wanted to make was that we literally just watched these catapults tear down half a mountain. Why did we not use these catapults to tear down a wall?
Yeah, just target one section of the wall.
Right. I don't know. It just feels again. I could tell they were doing it just for plot and obviously for our favorite bad guy to come in and use. But like it, I don't know. It's just weird.
I like that it looked kind of like a reverse crossbow somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Thought that was kind of cool. But
I kind of thought, when they were first rolling it up, I kind of thought, oh, they're gonna do like a siege crossbow like they used in Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
In the Two Towers, and then it ended up not being that at all.
Yeah. I think it was also an attempt to deliberately avoid the Helm's Deep wall breach,
probably.
And to avoid Grog from from Return of the King. I think it was an attempt to avoid both of those things and do something different.
Points for being creative and different, but yeah,
it's still literally Helm's Deep light.
I'm curious to hear why you think this is Helm's Deep light.
Bryce just says things. Ignore him.
So
it's just the same plot and like basic storyline for the most part, where we're just waiting. We're basically holding off till the army comes to save us. It's just a different ending.
Okay, moving on.
Yep.
Just saying.
It makes me think you don't understand Helm's Deep all that much, but
again, I'm looking at it from the casual perspective. It reminded me of Helm's Deep.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I guess.
They're both sieges of a city. So from that perspective, they are similar.
So we cut then again to Celebrimbor, who points out the mouse to Anatar. He says it's a pattern. It's a cycle that repeats regularly. He brings up that the candle hasn't melted all day, implying no time has passed at all. And he's kind of probing Anatar what is going on. Anatar says, I gave you peace. And Celebrimbor replies that this is hardly a gift. What have you done to me? And this scene is great. For the next 30 minutes, any exchange Celebrimbor and Anatar has is the best the show has been. Celebrimbor loses his cool and says, no emissary of the Valar would do this. And in this moment, he's kind of suspicious of who Anatar really is. Celebrimbor then throws Fëanor's hammer at him, and it breaks the window, letting in the sounds of the siege outside. He rushes to the balcony, and Anatar drops the illusion, and Celebrimbor can see that his city is in ruin and flames. This was a great moment for me. I loved this scene. I thought the performance from Celebrimbor was excellent. Going out and not just seeing that his city was in siege, but seeing that it's his fault, kind of. He's the leader. He's been trapped in this. He has let his people down. I felt the weight of the moment.
Yeah, I thought it was well acted.
Yeah, I believed him. I thought it was real good, and I thought the music was haunting. It's just kind of a choral moment. It was nice. In his throes of grief, he knocks over the mithril that Anatar gave him in the previous episode. And we see that it wasn't actually mithril. It was his blood. And he pulls the line, true creation requires sacrifice, and he shows Celebrimbor the cut on his hand. And it's at this moment that Celebrimbor is like, you're Sauron. So Celebrimbor leaves the tower into the ruined courtyard and gets blasted by a catapult. He comes to and finds Mordania still hanging out on the wall. She, at this point, reminded me of a Midwesterner sitting on the porch watching as the tornado comes down the street. Like, that's... She's just like, yeah, hey, that's her. She serves nothing. But he tells Mordania of the mouse and the ruby and the sounds. He sounds rightfully crazy. And she looks at him with such sadness, but she's not buying it. And he can see that she kind of thinks he's losing his mind. And then they have a weak moment where he looks down and he's like, that's the thinnest part of the wall. And it's just like, oh, cool, thanks. We didn't really need that. And the orcs somehow knew that was the thinnest part of the wall too. So just another moment we didn't need you to explain that. But then Anatar shows up and Celebrimbor starts spouting about how he is Sauron. And this is another, like I said, the next couple scenes with him, I love it. So Celebrimbor eventually is like, he bleeds black, cut him open and you will see. And as Anatar at this moment, he shows him that the blood on his hand is red. It's not black. And so everybody's still thinking that Celebrimbor is crazy. And so Mordania goes to guide Celebrimbor back to his tower. And this is a great scene. As she does that, Celebrimbor says, get your hands off me, and goes to just push her back. But we see Sauron flip his hand, and Mordania goes flying over the wall. And this scene was so good. I've already said I don't know why Mordania's there. Doesn't matter. But she's there to show us this. And this moment of he has been basically whining and dining this girl for episodes at this point. She has been our gateway to Celebrimbor and to Anatar, and he has been buttering her up. Even at the beginning of this episode, he's still buttering her up. And then in a split second, he sees an opportunity to further himself and further make Celebrimbor the bad guy to these people. And he seizes on the moment and just tosses his girl over the wall. And it is just a delicious moment of evil from Sauron that I was like, I kind of loved it. Kind of loved that moment. That's looking past.
You've said you need the good guys to be good and the bad guys to be bad. And like you said like there's room for gray in between for some characters, but like you have to have the poles, the polar
Yes.
opposites have to be like firmly established. This was a fantastic furthering of establishing the evil pole on this.
Evil.
Yep.
It was awesome. And this episode we get some bad gray in here, and we also get another of those polar good guys that I love, and we'll talk about that scene too. But I thought this was one of the better scenes of just this episode when we really start to see the Sauron that we are familiar with come out. He's not putting up the illusion anymore. He's ready to take out anything that stands in his way, and it's delicious. I love the acting. I buy him as a bad guy, 100%. Yep. So after he throws Mordania over the wall, he says, all of this can end. Finish the 9 and I will spare your city. I will create a perfect and lasting peace. The liar, but he gets Celebrimbor to go back in it. And at that moment, we hear the horn blow, and we see the elves of Lindon arrive in, I love their armor. They looked awesome. Elrond is leading, and I noticed that Gil-galad is behind him, beside him, and I thought that was a weird choice because I know they have this good relationship, and Gil-galad said Elrond would lead that thing with Galadriel, but I'm not quite sure if a king shows up to battle, why he's like, you know what, I'm going to step back this one, why don't you take charge? That was one of those that I didn't quite understand the hierarchy of this, but we see some wide establishing shots of numbers that I appreciated. The show often feels small. This moment did not. And Elrond orders death to our foes, and they charge. And it's pretty fun, epic moment. I'm glad that they didn't try to recreate anything from Return of the King here. It felt smaller. There was no big speech. Let's get at it. And then the orcs wheel their captive Galadriel to the front of the line, and the elves come to a halt. We then decide to parlay with Adar. And this whole scene, I didn't write down any lines. Oh, I did. But this whole scene is Elrond being a boss, and what I wish Galadriel would have been in any exchange she ever had with Adar. Why she ever let him have any influence over her is what drives me crazy about this. Because this entire scene, Adar looks like a chump, and Elrond is just like, I loved it. Adar has essentially helped me attack Eregion to stop Sauron, and Elrond tells him to take a hike. Adar, a great line that I missed when I was writing my notes. It says, Elrond is more suited to wielding a scroll. And Elrond says something about wielding a sword or a scroll, you have seen me use neither. And
he says something like you're more fit to wield a scroll than a sword, and Elrond's reply is you've seen me wield neither.
Yes, I thought that was so good. I love that line. I can't remember it, but I loved it. So Elrond tells him to take a walk. Adar doubles down. I will outmaneuver you. I will outfight you, and you will fail. And Elrond then basically replies, yeah, but I'm going to make you bleed doing it. And I just kind of love that this is that moral good that I'm talking about. He's unwavering. He is given this moment of like, hey, I can side with the kind of bad guy to take out the really bad guy, and it would be a gray moment. Or I can stand up for what I know is right and defend my people. And I'm like, I love Elrond in this entire episode. I loved him. But
well, and also the way he phrased it was it was serving two purposes. One, it was telling Adar to go F himself. But also, the way he phrased it was, are you willing to spill the blood of your children? And he kind of like looks over at the other orcs in the tent when he says it. And so he's also like watering that seed of discontent by them, which we know has already been growing because we've seen the other interactions. He probably wouldn't know that, but he's like placing or growing that doubt in their mind of, does our father really have the best intentions for us? Does he really have our best interests at heart? So that I really liked how he did that.
The whole scene, it's kind of an abrupt stop to the tension that we've had so far, but it's just great wordplay. And I actually, like I said, I love Elrond being that stand firm good of this moment. But then we get the controversial part that's breaking the internet. They basically say Galadriel is going to die then because of your choice. And Elrond's like, well, I'd like to say goodbye. And so he goes over, and then we get the kiss that everybody's been talking about, at least that I've seen on social media.
Yep.
Caleb, who is Galadriel to Elrond?
At this exact moment, just a friend. Friends with benefits at this point? I don't know.
In the show or in the...
In the future, Galadriel will become Elrond's mother-in-law.
Just
Galadriel will bear a child, Celebrian, and she will marry Elrond.
So
he's just plants one right on his future mother-in-law.
Yep. That's the awkwardness of this moment. Outside of that, for most people who don't know that, I did not I did not take this as any attempt at a relationship between the two. I took this merely as a distraction to sneak her the lockpick.
Yes.
It's still just like, you could have probably accomplished the same thing by like a long kiss on the forehead, but I get it. It's also just knowing the family story. It's a little bit cringy, but I can look past it, actually.
Yeah, because like that happens in the future, way down the line. Like the events of the future don't have an impact on the events of the present. So,
and when we're talking about beings that live for thousands of years, they probably all kissed each other's mother-in-laws at some point. Like, it probably happens all the time.
If you're around for long enough, it probably is bound to happen.
Oh, you probably have. I'm not. Never mind. So Elrond leaves with one of his commanders, and we learn that, according to the commander, the elves are outnumbered 10-1. And this is one of those times where, like, we're not seeing that shown very well, how big Adar's army is. And Elrond sends the soldier, go lead Durin's army to us. And he says, I will do what I can to hold the orcs off for a night. And that's one of the, like, it's one of the things I see a lot in Tolkien more than other fantasy. It's out there. It's in a lot of stuff. But this idea of, like, we're holding out for hope. I'm going to stand firm in this ground, and I'm going to fight for the hope that tomorrow is better. It's not like, it's one of those things that I kind of love. We cut to Durin shouting to approximately 16 dwarves. And it's it's another one of the good lines of this show. The great tale of our age is being written. It falls to us to decide if it will end in tragedy or triumph. And I'm like, yeah, man.
So we complain a lot about the writing in this show, and I think justifiably so, and we would all say so.
Did you have Blizzard for lunch?
Yeah. There are 2 monologues in this episode that are fantastic, and this is the first of the 2.
Yes, agreed. And I think part of what makes him stand out so much is that I'm not going, oh, this is the speech somebody gave in Two Towers.
Right.
This is new to this moment, and it feels like Tolkien.
Or even outside of that, there are a bunch of epic like pre-battle speeches. William Wallace and Braveheart.
Yeah.
Like there are a bunch of them. Yeah, this didn't feel like you're just ripping off another "Hey, let's go fight" speech. Like it was good. It was well done. It was original. All thumbs up.
Yep. So Durin continues that Sauron has returned and the elves need help. And he says in this monologue, great line that I loved, "Dwarven loyalty is a force stronger than any sorcery, more powerful than any army, and deeper than the bonds of the earth." And I love that line and his delivery of it. I was ready to go to battle with Durin. I'm there. Let's go.
Yep, that got me hyped.
The one part I hated was he gives a speech to like 16 people and then he turns and there's hundreds. And I was just like, why weren't you addressing the hundreds to begin with? And then that would have been awesome. It's just one of those staging things that I cannot grasp why they would do that. So we have a rather abrupt cut. It's like something is missing in this moment. We go from that speech and now the elves and orcs are just fully in battle. So the last time we saw Elrond, he was leaving from the parley with Adar. And the next time we see him, full-fledged, they're at battle. So this is one of those hints that I'm saying, I think time has passed. We are a day past, 2 days past, the parley is over, that night they were talking because now the sun is up again. So time has gone on. It's still just not very clear. It's like the charge, the initial command from Elrond to enter the battle is completely missing. He's leading the elves towards the wall, and we see an orc kill his horse. This is a little too much for me. I don't like animal violence, but I did like seeing Elrond put him in a catapult and launch him against the wall.
We got to see a little elf rage there, and that was kind of fun, actually.
It was fun. I enjoyed that. So at this point, the orcs have gotten on top of the wall and brought their wall-breaking device to its base. Now it's nighttime. We jump to night. The orcs are struggling to break the wall. We hear that Elrond has destroyed 5 trebuchets already. Something that would have been cool to see. We didn't see him destroy any, but we're being told that he has destroyed 5. So time is moving right along. Adar says to bring down the wall at any cost. And the orc says basically, but I thought you loved us. Like, why are you throwing our lives away to bring down the wall? And this is where we get that gray, morally gray bad character. And Adar says that he loves them too much to let them become Sauron's slaves. And that's one of the, like, we're trying to make Adar sympathetic. We're trying to give him a reason to feel for him. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I don't care for Adar at this point. So I could take it or leave it. I do think it adds a fairly interesting dynamic to the battle. But okay.
I'm just bummed out that I said this in our first, when we were watching episodes 1 and 2. I just can't help but think that this would be better if Joseph Mall was still playing Adar. I just loved him so much. Adar was one of my favorite characters from season 1, and that was due in very large part, as I'm learning the more I'm watching this, to Joseph Mall's performance. He just had something about how he portrayed that character, how he looked at the other actors on screen and everything, that Sam Hazeldine, he's doing fine, but he just doesn't have it. It's not the same. He's
a little too one note for me.
Yeah. There was a depth that Joseph Mall had and brought to that character that Sam Hazeldine just doesn't have.
I do like in this episode, he gets a little emotional. Like he sheds a tear.
Yeah.
At this moment, like he's like, I love you guys too much. And I do appreciate that, but yeah, like you're saying, there's kind of that additional depth is gone. So we kind of get an idea of that's his motivation for taking out Sauron. He doesn't want to see his children, as he's referred to them, become his slaves. We then see that Galadriel...
Before you start, Tim, I'm going to head out.
Okay. Bye,
right,
Bryce.
see you, buddy.
So we do see that Adar loves them too much. I'm recapping. Oh, Adar goes back to see that Galadriel has escaped, but then stops to give funeral rites to some dead orcs that were brought in. So finding her is not real top priority. I would have thought...
Not for him. He was like, my guys will do this. I'm going to go do this other thing instead.
I would have thought it's one of those things like, we'll do the funeral rites after we catch like this super powerful elvish being. We see Galadriel escape. She's wearing a cloak, and Arondir pops in, shoots some arrows, saves her. Kind of a cool moment. And one of the times that I'm actually excited to see Arondir. Normally, I'm like, what are we doing with this character? But now that he's interacting with the people who matter, I'm enjoying it. So Arondir says that he is here for Adar. And Galadriel's like, that's a suicide mission. Adar says, so he's taking everything else from me. He can have my life. And I kind of like that revenge tale. It's also like Arondir's kind of that morally gray good guy. Like he's fine with revenge, death to accomplish what he needs to.
Even like in season 1, we saw it a little bit when he was like, I'll cut down this tree, which elves like do not do in this capacity, but it's to get a peek over the trench to see like what method of escape do we have or whatever. So like there's been a couple times where he's been like, yeah, I'll do something that I shouldn't, but I'm gonna.
So this was the first moment that I realized that he and Adar are the true opposing forces of their storylines. So they just haven't interacted that much. But I'm realizing that's why Adar and Galadriel is uninteresting. Adar and Elrond was interesting because Elrond just walked all over him, even though like Elrond was in the submissive position. It was so cool to see. But I'm like, these are the two that story is actually intertwined.
Right.
And so this is more interesting to me. This is a moment where we get a properly characterized Galadriel too. Sitting here with Arondir and telling him there's been enough elven deaths this night. Like, it'd be a shame to waste yours. And we're seeing some wisdom from her. And I'm like, hey, there it is.
That's what we've been looking for.
That's what I want. And we go to Durin. He's armored up, preparing to leave with his army, when Narvi comes running in.
Which saying, I liked his armor. It looked pretty cool.
I'm still mad about this, but still have one more episode. Saying the king has lost his mind and cut down his own people. There's a key line here that... So Durin can't leave with the army. They need him to stop the king. The transition here implies that this is an illusion from Sauron. Because it slow fades from Narvi in the center of the screen to reveal Sauron in the center of the screen. Which made me think that this is an illusion.
Yeah, and he has his eyes closed and he's like doing the thing that he does when he's like spinning a web of illusion.
The other thing that made me think that it might be, because it also would make sense that it's not in setting up a dwarven finale for the next episode. But the other thing is that Narvi says he's cutting him down like wheat. And that seems not very dwarvish of Narvi. It seems very much like someone who's been on the surface around fields and farms. And so that, not a miner. Somebody who's used to cutting stone. So that's, maybe I'm giving the writers too much credit there. But that's something I was just like, that doesn't sound like a dwarf. But anyways, Narvi is like, you can't go. Then we see Sauron with his eyes closed. We see Celebrimbor is now chained to finish the rings. We get more great exchanges here between Celebrimbor and Sauron. And at the end of this scene, I didn't write it down because the whole exchange is good. Mm-hmm. It's a good back and forth about like, you've manipulated me, you've manipulated yourself, it's all good stuff. And the only thing that was a little bit like, I love Sauron going for the sympathy here of, I hate doing this to you, Celebrimbor, because Morgoth did it to me. And
do you know what it's like to get tortured by a god?
Yeah.
That was really, really good.
But it's also like he's lying because he was Morgoth's second in command.
That doesn't mean he didn't get tortured by him.
That's true. It just seems like maybe he's exaggerating a little bit to like play into Celebrimbor a little bit more.
Yeah, it could be.
A little bit more, but that it was good stuff in this. Good stuff in this. So then Sauron leaves. And Celebrimbor is like, you know what? I'm done. He throws the rings for men into the fire. We cut back to the battle scene. Elrond's out there being pretty awesome. I enjoyed just watching him fight some orcs. And then we go back. It's like 30-second scene. And we go back to Celebrimbor, pulls the rings out, and guess what? They're cool to the touch. I actually don't mind this. The one thing that I have enjoyed about doing the rings out of order is kind of watching Sauron hone his craft to make the final one. So we got the elvish rings, I can put power into them. And then we got the dwarven rings of he can put a little bit of manipulation in there and use that power for bad. And now we have the men. Okay, he's figured out we saw a little bit of the invisibility, what do they call that? The unseen?
Yeah, the unseen world.
The unseen world. We've got a little bit of that. But now with the men, technically they're all supposed to be really hard to destroy. But we see that here with the 9. They're not destroyed by fire. So I kind of like that progression, even though still didn't do it out of order.
There is one type of fire that is hot enough to destroy not the One Ring. The One Ring obviously can only be destroyed by the fires of Mount Doom. But the others, specifically the dwarves, there's one type of fire that is hot enough to destroy it. Do you know what it is?
No.
Dragon fire.
That was going to be my guess, but I was thinking dragon fire, wasn't it? So, okay. Smaug. That's one of the deep lore things on Lord of the Rings that I love, is that Smaug is basically one of the smallest dragons that ever exists.
Right.
I love that.
He's a junior dragon.
Yeah. You go into history and isn't there one like literally the size of a mountain at one point? It's just
and Calagon the Black is the biggest one.
Love that. I truly love that. So Celebrimbor takes these rings. He can't destroy them. He tucks them into a pouch, and he tries to break the shackles off of his wrist, but he has no luck. And so I don't like these scenes, but they're good stuff. He cuts his own thumb off to break
it's so metal.
It is. Right before he does it, his line, "We'll see whose will is greater now."
The setup to it. It's good. It's good. It's good.
So then Celebrimbor goes outside, takes another nasty fall. Every time he steps out of the tower, he gets hit.
Yeah, I don't know why they had like a siege something or other strike right next to him every time he walks out of the tower. Yes. Like you have this moment where like there's tinnitus ringing and he's like shell shocked for a second and then he stands up, and it happens twice in the same episode. And I'm like, that seems unnecessary.
I completely agree. But this time, guards are standing over him and like, "Hey, old man, we got to get you back to the tower." And Galadriel shows up, and this is the real leader of your city. What are you doing? And she can see very clearly how much Celebrimbor has been hurt by Sauron. And this is a great moment. And I felt for him. I felt for Celebrimbor through almost every scene he was in this. When he's back on that wall with Mardania and she's not believing him, like my eyes got watery. I was like, this is tragic. This is sad. It's good. Like, man, this is another moment when he says he thought that Galadriel was just another illusion meant to trick him further. And there was a moment that I thought she might be. I thought this might be like Sauron knows he has the rings, and so he's gonna trick. But it's not. But this is where we get the next great quote from the episode. And Galadriel's telling him, you gotta go. Get out of here. There's a dwarven tunnel that I use to get in. You can use it. Get far away from here. I'll take care of the city. And like a good captain going down with the ship, I love Celebrimbor, but he goes, I built this city. My place is here. And there's a little bit of dialogue, and he goes, neither of us was strong enough. There might not be anyone in Middle-earth who is. But perhaps the elves need only remember that it is not strength that overcomes darkness, but light. Armies may rise, hearts may fail, yet still light endures and is mightier than strength. For in his presence, all darkness must flee.
And here we get the second great monologue from this episode.
It was
great. So good. So the first one, you can liken it. We established like you don't feel like it's copying anything, but you can liken it to one of the rah-rah speeches before a big battle in one of the Lord of the Rings movies. It has that same feel to it.
Yeah, it gets
this one has the same feel to when Frodo and Sam are taken to Osgiliath by the Ithilien Rangers, and Sam has that beautiful monologue about you got to keep fighting, the darkness will pass, yada, yada, yada. It felt very much like that, but not too much like it. So I didn't feel like it was copy and pasted, but it gave me that same feeling as listening to that monologue, and I thought it was so well done.
It gave me, it's one of those other moments that I'm like, yep, this is also what I look for in Tolkien.
Right.
This moment. And yeah, that's exactly what it reminded me of, the end of the Two Towers movie when Sam gives that speech. And this is one of the moments where it would have been really easy for them to take a couple lines from that and use it. And I'm so glad they didn't.
They showed a very good amount of restraint.
Yes. So then after that, Galadriel tucks the rings for men. I laughed. I leaned over to Bailey and I was like, she tucks it in her bra and then leaves. And gone. So she's off. The orcs are breaking down the wall, and we have Elrond and his suicide squad ready to stop them. There's just like 4, and then this girl that we've seen twice before. She dies a very Boromir death for a character that we don't know her name or care about her much.
Her name is Rian. They do say it a couple times, but it's not enough to really care.
Nope. And then it is one of those heroic moments that I love. Like, she's a pincushion, but she has this duty that she's gonna see done before she collapses. Yep. And I like that. I wish, like, this episode made me realize, and like has been our theme with this season, that we hadn't spent hours of time with pointless characters and storylines that we don't care about, that maybe we could give some meat to the supporting characters in Elrond and Galadriel's story. Maybe this death could have meant more to me if I had seen her and Elrond interact more. Right. If I had seen some stuff behind that.
And we mentioned a little bit last week when we were talking about the last episode, we don't see what's on the cutting room floor. So like maybe there is more footage of her interacting in meaningful ways with other main characters, but we didn't get to see any of it. So this death isn't really very impactful for any of us.
Yes, and it's clearly set up and staged like it's supposed to be. So
Yeah.
that's okay, though. We get more action, and Adar is worried they're losing, so they send in their big gun, the moment we've been looking for since, was it episode 1?
It was either 1 or 2. Yeah.
1 or 2, yep. And you hear the orc next to Adar being like, but he will kill our own kind. This is a bad idea. And we cut somehow. Well, I guess Arondir would have arrived with Galadriel. So Arondir would have arrived with Galadriel. So now he's up on the wall. And I put in my notes, he's just welcomed in, I guess. Like, they just let him in with everybody else. Like, yeah, go shoot some arrows at things.
You got pointy ears. Come up here and start firing some arrows.
And he's leading people. This is like the Aragion army is in total shambles. Total
disarray. Yeah.
Yep. Nobody's there to take control. Arondir's like, fire over here. And they're like, okay, I don't know you, but yeah, all right. Celebrimbor shows up with the new guards in the tower, and Sauron is frantically looking for the rings and tells Sauron, you won't find him here. The guards surround Sauron, and Sauron does some Sauron-y goodness in this scene.
I loved it.
Yep. We get 6 guards. There's a 7th one who's standing by Celebrimbor, where we get 6 guards that circle Sauron, point their swords at him. And the 7th guard starts to say, you're under arrest, and then is just cut off. Not by anything we can see. He just stops and is frozen. And Sauron goes, you think you're the only thing under my control, basically? And
I think he said, you're not the only one that gave your mind to me, or something like that.
Yes, it's so good.
It was good.
And then he does more hand flicks. I don't really care for hand flicks. I get that it's a visual representation that he's manipulating something. I'm not like, oh, cool hand flick. I don't think it really means anything. It's just visual. But he turns all the guards on each other. They stab each other and die. And then he takes out the 7th one. And it's just a badass villain moment of like, dang, that got dark and fun. Like,
yep.
I hate to say fun, but like I said, I need that polar bad guy to make these good moments that much better. And this episode is giving us both. We're seeing Sauron get dark, and I've been waiting 2 seasons 2 seasons for this.
Yep.
So, and that's one of the things that I'm going to give the show credit. The buildup is making me enjoy it so much more. I'm enjoying it. I kind of still think season 1 might have been a little bit of a waste on him and Galadriel. I would have liked to not see that dynamic and get him in. But now that we're here, loving it.
I'm on board.
So then we see Damrod given some troll destruction outside. The orcs part ways to get out of his path, and he is headed to the wall. And I wanted to know what the difference between second age trolls are and third age trolls, because he seems just smarter than third age trolls. The third age trolls in the Lord of the Rings movies are just kind of big bumbling idiots, like mules. This guy definitely seems to have some awareness.
Right. He seems a lot more lucid than any troll we've seen in the third age.
Yes. When he grabs the 2 orcs and holds them up as a shield from the arrows was just satisfying. That was a fun time. That was basically, it's just a couple minutes of Damrod destruction and elves fighting him. We get Gil-galad, who's been missing since the charge. Gil-galad shows up. Arondir is firing from above, and Elrond all combine forces, really without communicating, to take out the troll. We get Arondir saying, "Commander, watch out." That's it. And it's actually pretty great. The only thing I would complain about is Gil-galad delivering the death blow is poorly edited.
Yeah.
I would say this whole sequence of the death is probably poorly edited, because we just get Damrod lying there smiling and the elves stabbing into nothing. And if you were to actually show a wider shot of something, or establish where Damrod is in relation, because Gil-galad charges straight at the camera with the spear, and like that horse needs to jump. Even if it had just given like the horse jumping over the camera would have implied. As is, it's poorly cut, but still pretty satisfying. It was a fun watch.
I wanted more Damrod.
Yeah, I'm sad to see him go so soon.
with the amount of build up. Maybe I built it up in my mind too much because I liked the song so much that they wrote for him, but I wanted more Damrod.
Well, because I was thinking back on this, I was like, man, they built it up a lot. And then I was like, no, we only saw him one time before this.
Yeah. I think I built it up in my mind more than the show built it up.
However, I would agree. There's something about just chaotic carnage that he brought that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So Elrond turns to Gil-galad like he didn't know he was here. It's kind of a weird, like, what are you doing here? And Gil-galad goes, a good line, a king's place is wherever the need is greatest. Like it, with
maybe
Damon
infers that the need was greatest in a different part of the battlefield up to this point, but then the need became greatest here, so then he came over here. I don't know.
Well, I took it as Elrond being like, why are you at this battle period?
Mm.
So that was maybe my misinterpretation of how Elrond was asking it.
I could see it either way.
Yeah. It's not super clear, but it is a good line from Gil-galad. With Damrod dead, Adar leads a charge just as the sun begins to rise. It's a walking charge. It's not really thrilling. They just start walking slowly across the riverbed. Elrond looks to the sunrise, and we see a horse cresting a hill, and I go, oh, Helm's Deep.
Mm.
But after announcing that the dwarves are coming, look to the north, he sees that it is just the one horse, and it is carrying Borahir, who he sent earlier in the episode. He is injured, and he says that the gates of Khazad-dûm are shut. So you want to give a lore significance to that? Is there...
I think that was just stating that the army was not issuing forth from it. Yeah,
I didn't know.
I don't think there was anything deeper than that. I think it was just like we're not doing business right now.
Okay. I didn't know if that had anything to do with like the gates being shut for good.
Yeah, I don't think it was that.
Okay. So this is one of those moments that, again, I love in a lot of Tolkien stuff. I love it in any kind of fantasy or any storytelling, really. But at this point, we see that out of all of the elves that showed up, there's maybe 20 of them left outside the walls of Eregion. And there's still it looks like hundreds. According to the script, it's probably thousands of orcs to take on. And it's clearly a fight that they can't win. And I just love these moments, and Tolkien stories set them up so well of impossible odds and heroic people. Just, they look out, see this impossible odd moment of we can't win, but we're going to buy our friends time. We're going to buy
if
our
we're going to die, let us make it a death worthy of remembrance. Oh. Like it's a line from Theoden, but like that manifests itself a lot in Tolkien's writing of like, we're probably going to die, but we're going to die fighting for good against this evil that's in front of us. And that's going to be how we go.
There will be songs written about us. Like that's our goal. Go out like that.
It's great. I love it.
Yep. So I loved seeing these elves, Gil-galad. Elrond's kind of like struck with betrayal almost. Like, what do you mean the dwarves aren't coming? And it takes him a minute to recover.
I thought that was really well acted. I felt just the absolute despair of Elrond being like, it's a personal betrayal, but it goes beyond that. Or I guess the other way around. It's we're going to lose the battle, but losing the battle is only like half of the crushing depression that he feels crashing down upon him because he also feels like he was betrayed by his friend.
Yes.
Yeah,
because
I felt all of that in his visage.
it was so well done. And I'm looking at it, you go, he probably wouldn't have done what he did if he didn't think the dwarves were coming. He probably wouldn't have led thousands of elves to their death. You know, we kind of have this parallel of Adar throwing the orcs to death to save them. And Elrond is throwing his elves to death to save their friends. And it's this interesting parallel, but that crushing weight of him realizing the dwarves aren't coming and basically all of these deaths are on his hand.
Yep.
Along with that, his friend isn't going to be there for him. Like,
you really feel the
moment.
gravity of it in his face. It was very well done.
It's one of the highlights, and we get some cool. Gil-galad is awesome with the spear. Some cool
I
action.
loved watching Gil-galad fight. He was so good.
I love seeing the spear in action. It's like Middle Earth Darth Maul, like double-edged spear. It's so cool to see. We see Arondir take on Adar in what was genuinely a surprise, but I think we're safe. Arondir gets his showdown with Adar, and it was pretty cool. Arondir fires an arrow, and Adar grabs it out of the air and uses the same arrow to stab him. And I was like, that was pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
And then Arondir grabs another arrow and stabs Adar, and then Adar stabs Arondir with a sword. So it's kind of anticlimactic, but we don't see Arondir actually die.
Yep.
You're left with the most likely pretty fatal wounds from my guess, but the way they left it, I bet we're going to see him in the next season or the next episode. And whether it is healing or dying, that's left to be seen.
Right.
So then the orcs finally breach the wall. They enter the city. Elrond has that tragic moment of looking and seeing his fellow elves just being stabbed and slaughtered around him. Adar comes to stand over him, and he takes Galadriel's ring from him, and he says, "Do not wage war out of anger," or something like that.
Yep. And
we get the credits. And the credits are accompanied by probably the most metal song to have ever existed.
Probably.
So the music has to be discussed on those credits because this is the standout.
It is so good. I saw a clip about this on Instagram like 2 months ago, and I sent it to everybody that I know that either watches this show or is a fan of metal music, because I was like, this is so good. And then they released the full song on Spotify. In my Spotify Wraps in a couple months, it might be one of my most listened to songs at the end of the year. I have listened to it so much because it is so good.
It's awesome. I do like to watch the trailers for the next episode usually.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like spoilers, but I like to get the hype. I kind of want to see, all right, so this is where we left off. Where might we be going? But I sat through the credits and I was just like, oh, we got to listen to this. We're sat through and listened to the whole thing. So that song is awesome. Damrod's theme, is that the name of it?
The Last Ballad of Damrod.
It's even got a metal name. I love it.
Yep.
So that's this episode. Caleb, what did you think?
I liked it overall. We had some really good moments. The writing overall, I think this was one of the better written episodes of the 15 that have been released to this point.
Absolutely.
The interactions between Sauron and Celebrimbor were really, really good. The monologues that we talked about were really well done. The scene between Elrond and Adar was really, really well written. So I don't know if there's just like one or two writers that really get it, and every now and again we'll get an episode that's primarily them, and we get this, and then there are other times where that's not the case. I think a lot of the complaints that we have about the writing come from other storylines that we haven't seen a lot of lately.
Yes.
So there might be something to that as well. Like they're writing for specific characters and it's just not as good from that perspective. But yeah, I mean, overall, I have a lot more. This is not always the case if you go back and watch our other videos recapping episodes, but I had a lot more positive things to say about this episode than negative things to say, like by far.
Oh, absolutely. I think what you're saying about the writing, by this point, episodes like this almost make the episodes with bad writing that much more painful to watch.
Because know they can do it.
Yes.
They just aren't consistently doing it.
And it's like you said, it has made me, at this point in the show, it has made me wonder if the team of writers has one person writing this storyline, one person writing this storyline, and they're all like, okay, how can we mix it?
Right.
Because there's absolute garbage, and then there's episodes like this that are good. This episode has its faults mostly in somehow the battle, while it's satisfying, it still feels small for what's supposed to be a siege of a huge city. The city of Eregion still feels like a couple walls and a courtyard. So there's still some problems with it. The Elvish army is an absolute mess in Eregion. I'm pretty sure there's 20 of them out there. Right. So that'll be things that, what happens in the next scene. Those things are clunky. But when it's written like this episode, I can kind of look past that a little bit because the rest of this episode was thrilling. It was good. The character moments paid off, and I'm here for that. But at this point, I mean, I'm pretty sure I've said it for the last 3 episodes now. I don't even care about the stranger anymore. I don't need, just drop it. Let it go. Sorry. Don't want it to come back. Because if I get a moment with Nori and Poppy and the stranger in the finale while all of this is going on, I don't want it.
And we're going to get it. We have to. There's no way we don't get that.
Oh, right. I agree, but I don't want any.
But I don't want it. Yeah, that is. We've said this the last several episodes that we've recorded, but it has gotten to the point where there are a couple storylines where anytime that storyline is happening on screen, I'm just mad about it because I know it's taking away screen time from another story that could be, because we have this whole thing, the whole Eregion situation.
Yep.
Maybe this is it for season 2 of Eregion. Like maybe we don't get anything in the final season. Maybe they just leave it on a cliffhanger, or maybe it's just like one scene.
You want me to tell you what was in the trailer?
No, don't tell me.
Okay.
Numenor, we got to figure out what's going on over there, because now all of a sudden the people are on Muriel's side again and not necessarily Farazan. So like we got to wrap that up. Maybe we need to see Isildur again at some point before the season ends. Then we got the stranger. Like we have like 4 or 5 different storylines, and we have an hour and change in the final episode of the season to tie up those at least a little bit. Probably not completely, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see at what point things get cut off in each of those storylines.
I was excited to see that this episode was an hour and 12 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw that, I was like, yes, all right.
Yes, good.
I'm hoping the next one is an hour and a half, in all honesty, because I want more. it's same thing we've said about season 1. The first 4 episodes were meh. These last couple have been great.
Mm-hmm.
So we're 3 episodes in. So I thought 4 was my favorite of the series. 5 was a mixed bag. Or no, 4 was my least favorite. 5
Correct.
was my favorite so far. 6 was a mixed bag. This one is right up there with 5 on it's the storylines and the quality of the writing. Has everything to do with the perception of the episode. So I'm very scared about what the next episode is. Honestly, like
I will say, we have now confirmed I do have the gift of prophecy. Because at the end of episode 4, you and Bryce were very down about everything, rightfully so. And I was like, I see the building blocks for a really, really awesome, some really awesome moments in a really cool back half of season 2. And that's what we're getting.
See, I still wish, and maybe we will. Maybe we'll get it. At this point, I'm still trying to see how episode 4 matters in the overall storyline.
Right.
And I'm starting to wonder if it's going to be the saving grace in the next episode. So, in the lore, doesn't Aregion fall?
Yes.
So, it's not going to be a happy ending.
Right. Aregion gets sacked.
Yep. So, I'm prepared for that, but they're going to need a way out of the city. It could just be they use the dwarven tunnels. I don't know. Or maybe Isildur rides in with some of the people from episode 4 and takes them out. I don't know. But also, I can't possibly imagine what they're going to do in Numenor for this last episode to maintain any interest for the next season.
Right.
Like, where you kind of had a big moment at the end of the last one. It was a big moment. But, like, where do you go from there without 3 or 4 episodes to set it up?
Right.
You know? So I'm curious about that. I do like the Numenor storyline. Yeah, I texted my mom, who way back I said, she's the reason I'm in the Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
I texted her and I said, Mom, episode 7 almost makes everything else worth it. Almost makes everything else worth it. So you might want to start watching season 2. She watched 1 and she was like, I just didn't care.
Yeah.
Like, ultimately didn't care about anybody. And I'm like, I can buy that. But
yeah, fair enough.
Yep. So after this one, I'm just left. Fire the writers who are writing those terrible storylines. Keep these guys on. Let's accelerate to the end. Let's drop the fluff and let's go. I do also wonder if I'm seeing things that make me wonder if they took some feedback from season 1 and are trying to organically trim it. But it's still leaving fluff, still leaving stuff we don't care about. Like, suddenly Arondir is in the midst of the action with the characters we care about. Mm-hmm. He could be dying, and he will be a storyline that's dropped off, and they brought it in together. So that's one. They could be listening to the people who are like, why are we following this guy? We haven't seen Theo for episodes.
Right. Theo and Isildur, we left them back in episode 4, and we have not seen them once since then.
Yep. And the only one we care about is Isildur because we know he's important. He is going to be one of the most important characters in the final season of this story. Yep. So at this point, he's just getting dirty. They're treating him dirty right now.
Right.
He'd be far more interesting at his father's side or at Arondir's side at this point. So, but I'm also wondering if they're going to wrap up this Poppy and Nori stuff sooner than season 5.
I'd be okay with that. That's fine.
I'm okay with that. Are they going to wrap it up or are they going to drop it? What are they going to do with it? I don't know.
Right.
So I don't really care. Don't really care, but I'm seeing those little clues of like they know what the strong stories are because they have been the focus for the latter half of this season.
Yeah, so hopefully moving forward we get less filler and more fleshed out meat of the stories.
Yep. That's what I'm hoping, and I'm seeing those threads coming together, but will they stick to it or not? Yet to be seen.
Right.
So I don't really have much more to say. This episode was satisfying. Sad Bryce had to go because he thought this was Helm's Deep Light. So
yeah,
he thought it was a knockoff of Helm's Deep, and I wish he was here to explain that. So
yeah, me too.
I would have liked to see that. Maybe we can have him start off the finale with the thoughts of that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's all I have.
Yep, that's all I got.
Okay. Before we jump into the next category, I want to tell you a little bit about Zencastr. When I was preparing for our 13 Nights of Halloween series, I was really searching for a way to streamline the process. I wanted a professional-looking setup to invite our guests to. I wanted quality audio and video recording, and I wanted the easiest way to release the episodes to as broad of an audience as possible. This is how I landed on Zencastr. It is now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Just log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. And speaking of audio quality, have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So if you are thinking of starting your own podcast or just want to streamline what you are already doing, go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code AVERAGECUSTOMER, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. That's average customer, one word. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all of my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
And now we return you to our regular scheduled program in progress.
Means that